Welcome to the AG45 Soul Aligned Strategy Podcast, where business meets purpose, growth feels good, and results meet enjoyment. Hosted by Katherine Breuss, CEO and founder of AG45, this show is built on 30 years of hands-on experience across 4 countries, 3 businesses, and 1 incredible life raising 4 children. Katherine brings a rare whole-person perspective to business, strategy, and leadership. This podcast is for business owners ready to stop spinning, start aligning, and build a business that delivers real value while creating a life that actually feels like yours. At the end of the day, you are the engine behind it all. And when you're clear and aligned, everything moves with purpose. It starts with you. Let's dive in. Tyler, welcome to the Soul Line Strategy Podcast. It's great to have you. And I would love for you to introduce to everyone else who you are and tell us about your business.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Tyler Marcus, CEO of Gradmor, founder, co-founder. We started the company in 2017. So I've been running the business for 8 years. Our main business is workforce intelligence. So it's helping businesses understand how to improve workforce productivity, performance, efficiencies using data science, analytics, and now AI, depending on what the situation is. So our business has evolved over 8 years. And not only has my business evolved, but I feel like I've evolved with it as it's grown. So yeah, I think that's the essence of what my company does.
Very cool. And especially, gosh, I bet your business with everything that's going on in terms of AI and how work is changing, I could see the real need for what you do.
Definitely. Actually, when we started it, I felt like we were a bit early in the cycle of data and analytics within like people and talent. It was like mostly like enterprises were focused on it. But now, like, I think since AI has become more mainstream, smaller businesses are starting to realize the value of that data. As you know, when you're using like AI ChatGPT or something, you're like, well, how can I apply this to make us more productive? So people start to think more about it as opposed to being like, why do I need data around employees and people? And, when it's really one of the key parts of a business success. So it's definitely changed how people think about this topic, which has made our business easier to work with companies and go beyond what we're doing. So
I can echo that. I currently work with a business in Illinois, and data analytics has become one of their number 1 strategic priorities over the next few years, looking at it from all realms. So if businesses aren't looking at it, they should.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and I think data analytics has been, in marketing, we use it. My background's in marketing. So digital marketing, data science. I worked in digital marketing for 7 years, Facebook ads, like Google, like AdWords, things like that. Data was always like, that's how you drive your ads, right? If you're optimizing ad campaigns, you would use data to make the cost per click drop or to increase conversions, everything. Same thing in sales. People use sales data to drive business. But when it comes to people and data, a lot of times they don't really understand how to leverage it, what can be used. I obviously, if your company's 10 people, it's very hard to use people data because you don't have enough sample. Once you get up to a couple hundred or more, depending on your business use case and what you're doing, there is potential applications to not just like drive better business, but to make your revenue increase, cut costs. Like people don't realize the power of people data in business success. And it's even now today, I think sometimes it gets overlooked, but I think it's starting to become a little more, I don't know, mainstream, if you want to call it, or something along those lines.
Cool. That's really, really cool. I know I'm learning more about data and how to utilize it just from working with businesses who are or wanting to. So very cool. And I can appreciate getting into a business maybe sooner than the market is necessarily ready for it, because when I was in Asia, that happened to me as well. But I'll save that story for another time. So, as you know, AG45, we are all about soul-aligned strategy, and for, the power when a business owner really understands who they are, what they want, and integrating that and aligning it to their business. So I would love to hear from you how soul-aligned you are and the impact you see that has made on your business.
Great question. I think, I think the concept of soul alignment for me like has come in the past few years. So I started the company 8 years ago. We started the company, and obviously when you're like your entrepreneurship journey, I feel like a lot of it is your own personal journey is kind of has to be kind of like aligned with it, because like it forces you to grow in a certain way. And if you don't, you just either like are very stressed or like disconnected, or you just quit because you don't have anything tangible holding on to what you're trying to do. And I think I felt like in the first like 2 years, 3 years, it was like a struggle for me. And I think actually post COVID, it was a struggle because COVID kind of like we had a business and then COVID like just like kind of ruined it in a sense of what we were doing because of the changes that happened. And it kind of forced like a readjustment. So we almost had like two businesses in the same 8 year frame where you had this like startup version and then you figure it out. And then we had to restart it back up again. But what I realized is like when we were doing it the first time, I felt like we were kind of misaligned with what we wanted to do personally. So like we were just like, oh, let's do this stuff because it makes us money and this is what we want to do. But then you're ending up doing things that like you don't want to do. The problem with that is you end up draining energy. I find like so over time you're doing things you don't enjoy. It's kind of like working at a job and then being like, I hate what I'm doing, but now you're doing this all the time. It's very hard to really wake up in the morning and want to push yourself, or do it the right way. So what we learned is like, how do we do things that add energy to what we're trying to do and what's the impact we're trying to make? Yeah. So like if for me, like I get the energy from like business development, right? So like my whole thing is like, okay, networking and events, I get energy from that. I could do that 10 hours a week. Most people are like, they're burned out. I'm like, I don't. It adds energy for me. But that's me. Like my personality is like, I like it. So if I'm doing my things that are more like that and spending less time on things that I don't find add energy, and my business partner the same way, we just outsource it or we find another solution, because we used to try to do all this stuff and then we're doing things we don't like. And then you're like, why am I even doing this? Meanwhile, like if you put all your energy into things you're good at, you just compound that. It just adds up.
Yeah.
Right? So when I think about soul alignment, I think a lot of it's like who you are as a person, like authentic to yourself, and how that comes out for what you're doing. And I think a lot of times when we start companies and we do things, we get disconnected from it because we feel like, oh, well, then you have to do this because the media says you have to do that, right? Or hustle. You have to be, if you're not spending all your time on social media, well, that's not for me. But hey, my power is in person. So we can outsource social media, or maybe that's not a strategy we need. So I think that's how I think about it. I think then you enjoy the journey more and you start to be more present, and it comes off more with people because they're like, wait, this person's pretty tapped in now. There's a lot of reasons why, and I think it often gets overlooked more than anything.
Yeah. I really love that you brought the energy drain into it, because how we see soul alignment, ultimately you are getting results and you're enjoying the journey. And results mean different things to different people, in terms of what that is. And what I see a lot of businesses, they're either getting one or the other, or they're getting neither. And some I'm kind of going, what are you doing? Like, get a job, because you're going to actually end up making more money, spending your time better, and, enjoying the journey overall. But I love the fact that you said that the first go round you felt was more of an energy drain. And I think that's probably a really good clue to someone that maybe they are spending their time on things that aren't necessarily feeding them or nourishing them and draining them. And that could be a first clue that maybe you're not soul aligned.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that is because it's like you're doing something that you feel like you have to do. And then it's like I think it's fine like for a few months, but I think over years it can start to wear. It does. It's just like over time, you're like, why am I spending 5 hours a day doing things I don't enjoy?
Yeah.
For the thing I started myself.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's a question. So for those who are sitting in the first few years and they might not have the resources, so you are having to wear all hats, when you are in the first few years of a business. What would be your advice in terms of the whole kind of energy drain versus energy inspire? Or
That's a great question. I think here's the thing. Like, I don't know if you can like hack the journey in some senses, right? Like you launch a company, you're going to do everything you can to try to get it going. That's going to require you to do things that you don't probably like. I mean, it's just the nature of it, right? It's like you're going to be forced to do that. I think just over that journey, I feel like part of the problem is like we get caught up in that. And it's like, okay, we're trying to do these things, but you have to see it as like, we're testing these things out, and then this is not a permanent thing. And if it starts to become and you're growing your business, maybe after a year, you can start being like, where is my energy best served? I think a lot of times we go in, we don't really know that. Like I knew that I like doing like business development, but I don't think I really like truly understood this is why I like it and here's how. And here's how I can build off that. I think so. I think the first year or two is sort of like you have to see it as like a discovery in a sense. And I don't think you can be like expect to be fully solely aligned within the first 3 months. I think it's very hard to, unless you're very like set on what you're doing. So I wonder, part of me thinks it's part of the journey to sort of have this like suffering moments. I know it sounds pretty Buddhist, like, like, oh, like you have these suffering things to like build better. But I think there is a purpose to it. And it's like to help you define what truly matters and where you really excel.
That's it. So you hit the nail on the head in terms of the purpose, what truly matters. Because even, yes, so what we're saying, you and I, we're not sitting here saying that, okay, once you're soul aligned, you're going to be waking up and being like, oh, life is so great. And I love everything I do. There are going to be, even when you are soul aligned, there are going to be things that you're doing that it's like, I'd rather be doing something else. But it's not that you're doing it all the time. And when it funnels up into this bigger why and really understanding who you are, those little things that maybe aren't your favorite thing to do don't seem to bother or drain you as much if you didn't have that alignment at that higher level.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I think that's really a great point in the sense of like, how do you figure that out? And I think like I think being aware of it is better. Like I was never really aware of soul alignment. Like I wasn't like, oh, my first year of working in my company, I'm trying to like achieve soul alignment. Like you don't really think about being aware of it. You just kind of like over time, after much suffering, you're like, okay, how can I like where am I like when you start to realize where am I spending my best time? And if I just double, triple down, quadruple down on those things, the results are they're going to be there because you're in a place of like flow, essentially, right? It's like, yeah, I like, like Cutler's book about like flow states. It's like you are because you're in your most best place. You're not in a place of like, doing things that are taking away that piece of it. So I think that's like a really important distinction. So my advice, I think, for early stage founders is like use this as a discovery, help figure that out. What does that mean to you? Like, and I think you could get better. Like I think if I knew 6 months in that like, hey, your soul's aligned with this, maybe I would have allocated my time better or done something, like honestly. But I think there's always going to be like a growing pain part of it. It's not, and there's a purpose for it, I guess, just to help you build.
Absolutely. And, suffering, we learn from it as long as we are aware and are willing to look in and evolve and grow.
Right. Well, yeah. And the thing is like with suffering with anything, like it could go one or two ways. Like you can grow and evolve, or you can honestly create mental stress for yourself, or, and it could just build within you. So you want to make sure that you're seeing it from that perspective of like, this pain is leading to a fail forward type mentality, a growth, not as like taking it personally and like being like, oh, this means I'm a bad business person. Right. Or like, there are times where I had like imposter syndrome where I was like, all this, like, it was like, oh, well, maybe I'm just not good at this. And then you start to like dream, oh, that's not good. Because now you're losing your confidence by your own self-sabotage, So like I think those types of things are very important to understand when you're building something or working on something. And that mentality shift, like, is what makes you better on a day-to-day basis. Unfortunately, like, we're all subconscious in a sense of like people's, like, when someone's in a relaxed state, like people pick up that energy more than if you're seeing stress, they pick up the stressful energy. It's just like we like to think we don't, but like the energies do matter. Like it's all subconscious. I mean, in the sense like when like a really good speaker walks in the room, right? Or like you could pick up a certain energy. There's a certain reason. It's like there's a certain energy to their essence that captures that, and that's why like historically really good like let's use Barack Obama or like anyone that's a really good speaker. They capture a certain gravitation that is what it's a subconsciousness. It's not just what they're saying, right?
They show up in a certain way. You feel it. You absolutely feel it. I mean, we are all made up of energy. That is that's who we are. We're energy. And so our we give and take off of each other. So 100% everything you've said, I am just like, one, hats off that you are saying it because not a lot of people speak this way. But you're spot on. And we've all, I love that you brought up imposter syndrome. And in a lot of ways, I find that it's just such now an overused term, but it's so like true. I have yet to meet a human being who has not said at one point they have felt like a fake or that they didn't have the confidence or imposter syndrome. And what's interesting is that I feel that if we are all more real and more soul aligned, we show up more authentically and with more vulnerability and
That's
that energy of like, hey, it's okay. We're both humans. We've both made mistakes. We've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and we can actually learn and grow from each other. And that's the other thing that I want to see more owners experience because it can feel very lonely as an owner and a CEO of a business.
Totally. Yeah. And I think imposter syndrome, I don't, most successful people have it. I think that's the other thing. And I think it's just part of like, I used to have it a lot with my data work. So my data science abilities, I would have this imposter syndrome. I wasn't good enough. It's like, based on what, where you think like, oh, I'm not good enough to be doing this stuff. And it's like, well, you literally been doing this for 12 years, 15 years now. Why are you doubting yourself? And I think sometimes it's because you're stuck in like a tech bubble too. Like I'm in conversations with high level data science people. They're also like in the top, percentage of data analysis. So you start to think like, oh, they must have knowledge. Everybody else, but it's like most people don't have that knowledge. Like, I mean, most of my clients, I mean, like if I'm working with talent HR, like they're the opposite of data and they're meant for different reasons. And it's like the stuff I'm doing is that imposter syndrome is just hurting me because it's coming off as like, oh, maybe you're not confident in what you're doing when you're like actually giving them huge impact in how they think of things. So I feel like that sort of like just having a understanding of imposter syndrome and where it comes from can be helpful. And like I think a lot of mine came from like being in school or something and like not, who knows, not being good enough or like grades and you're like, oh, like this pressure. I went to such a like a very academic high school. I was used to being like put under high pressure situations at a very young age. That obviously has like two sides of the coin, right? I feel like there's the good and bad of that. The good thing is you're used to that, right? So like I'm used to being in high pressure situation, right? Because like I've been doing it since I was 14. Problem with downside is that you doubt yourself a lot because you're like, am I good enough? Right? You're like, oh, like all these other people are better than me. And it's like, so you have this sort of double-sided coin. Like, how can you use that as a superpower versus like a negative, right? If I'm used to high pressure things, it allows me to relax better maybe in a meeting versus feeling doubt. Like, so it's like everything I feel like has like, like anything has like two sides to the coin of how it can be perceived in your head, right? So it's that's really how I think about it.
Yeah, and I love that you said superpower because we point people to their superpowers and connect that back many times in terms of with their business strategy and bringing their superpower more to it because the business owner, you are the engine behind it. So how you show up in your mind in the sense of you're the one who's making decisions, you're the one taking action. And so, how aligned you are within yourself absolutely impacts everything you do. And the way I see it is this domino effect of you have soul aligned people, not only you, the business owner, then the people in your business. And then that domino effect, that energy that goes, and then beyond out to your customers, your clients, and then the communities, and that whole ripple or domino effect that occurs. That's what really excites and drives me.
I think the soul alignment thing too is a lot of it is like I think as business owners we become like very like I don't want to say self-centered, but we could become like it's all about like what we're trying to build. I feel like when you have more of the soul alignment, you start to see it more as like the impact and things you're doing. Like so when I think about my business now, like yeah, we started in this way, and I feel like it was very much like here's what we're trying to do with like our workforce stuff. Since I feel like I've been more soul aligned, I'm more like okay, how can I help these people do this? I'm like starting 2 other businesses for just because like I find that I work better as like serial entrepreneur than I do as just a one business owner. But also I'm thinking about like how can this make an impact in the Milwaukee community, right? Or like what I'm trying to do. And I feel like when you're tapped in that way, you don't become as self-absorbed in what you're trying to accomplish for like yourself. You start to like, because like the concept of the soul, I think a lot of it is like through connection and through impact. I mean, if we don't have to go down the road of like souls and how our lives like may have that happened, but like when you think about the concept of the universe and all that, like it is from that standpoint. It's not from like a self-absorbed standpoint. So that's the thing. So that's where the alignment comes, and it's like it's much more natural for me to think about like how's this going to impact our greater community and what we're doing. Yes, like workforce can help make things efficient, but are there other things that I'm doing that I could tie in that help? And I think that's really one of the key points to it as well.
I love it. Well, Tyler, if there was one thing or piece of advice that you would give any business owner, and particularly when it comes to this soul alignment piece, what would that be?
So my thing is meditation and yoga, as I find that was like the biggest thing. There's something about like it forces you to go inward over time. Now, people like with meditation, they're like, oh, like no, like I found it compounds. It's one of those things you have to do consistently. But I find it forces you inward, and then you start to be more in tune with yourself, even from like a business perspective. So I find that that's like if I was like, here's your one thing, I would say do something along those lines, because I think that then you really you feel more and you're more in tune with what you're aligned with, because you're not so outward, right? You're balancing out the inwardness. That would be my suggestion.
Another fabulous point, because it is very dangerous. And if anyone out there is connecting their enjoyment or their purpose or their who they are to the external, it's a very dangerous place to be. It should always be pointed inward to you. And so curious, Tyler, what kind of yoga do you do?
So I'm a hot yoga person. Like they kind of do vinyasa-ish. There's a little Kundalini influences, but I'm very into hot yoga because for me, I'm a little ADD. So yoga sometimes like my mind will wander in like when it's hotter, it forces you to like be in tune with your breath, because that regulates your body temperature more. People like if you're in your breathing zone and it's 100 degrees in the room, you're regulating your body temperature and you're keeping your heart rate at a right limit. If your mind starts to wander, you're not focused, you could start to feel a little like vertigo. So it's almost like it does force you to act in that meditative state. And so I've been a hot yoga person. I used to do yoga, but now I'm consistently a hot yoga person because of that. I find it keeps me more focused when I'm in class. And I think that reverberates for me.
I get that. So I'm, because when I lived in Asia in Singapore, and I did quite a lot of yoga with other things. So I'm an Ashtanga yoga teacher, or certified. I wouldn't say I'm a teacher. I don't actively teach. I took it for my own personal. I really wanted to understand it. So doing it in Singapore is like doing hot yoga.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Pretty much, right? It's always hot yoga in Singapore, you know?
It really is. But I will say there is something really like when it is hot, it does make yoga, in my personal opinion, easier to connect and easier. Well, one, you're warmed up, so your body will stretch more. It can also be dangerous, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not like in the wrong circumstances with like, yeah, do I suggest someone with like a heart condition who's like do that? No. Like,
No.
there's certain elements where it's not like an ideal thing. I just find I found it keeps me more focused, because my thing is that I can get very distracted easily. Like a lot of founders, I think too, like they could be a little ADD. Like most of my friends who are entrepreneurs have a little ADD, or I guess in the sense that we're like all crazy, like running around. This like allows you to come back to the center in alignment. So I think that's where I found it. But I think a lot of like the Eastern influences around this stuff, like I think is helpful. Like I know I mentioned Buddhism before. I think like parts of Hinduism too. Like I think certain Eastern religions, they speak a lot about the soul in its own way and alignment in its own self. And I think there's a lot to learn from that in how you actually operate a business. I know people think that might sound far-fetched, but I think there is in how you like think about what you're doing and how it aligns with what you're trying, like what your purpose is. And it allows you, like they give you the tools to like tap into that in a way. versus like the Western culture, we're very much results driven about like, okay, like, it's just the nature of the West to be like, here's what we're doing. And even our religious concepts can be like that. I think there is elements of benefit to understanding and learning just historically about, those types of religions, Taoism, like the balance of the yin and yang. But those things matter, like in how you like approach what you're trying to accomplish, and it will make it easy.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Like you don't, if you have just results, but you're not enjoying the journey, in my humble opinion, it's like, what's the point? And
Yeah,
if you just enjoy the journey, but you're getting no results, again, I'm kind of like, well, what's the point? Like,
exactly. Exactly. So it's like, or yeah, and the thing is like I think a lot of people fall into like, oh, I'm doing really great, but I'm not really enjoying this. And it's like, okay, you got to take a step back and be like, okay, how can you make this more enjoyable? Or maybe it's not what you expected it to be, but you gotta find that happy medium. Yeah,
mhm.
balance of it. Like, the results, purpose, alignment, that's what you want. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff, but I don't feel it. This is why like people who work in, jobs that make a lot of money sometimes feel disconnected, right?
Mhm.
Many corporate people who work in corporations that make like, top 1% money, but they still don't feel great. And it's like, okay, well, why is that's not good either? Just because you're getting like financially wealthy, but in the end, like your present day to day is what matters because that's what it's about in the end. Because how you feel in the moment, it's not necessarily how you're going to feel when you retire or something. So I think there's a lot to be said.
Yeah, there's this statement that I hear a lot of people, owners as well as employees that say, I'll be happy when. And the moment I hear someone say that, I know that they're coming from an outside in approach. And that's where it's like, okay, we got to start looking inward in order for you to get the outward coming towards you. So, Tyler, if there is one thing where you are now in your business that you want to evolve or grow, what would that be?
So specifically to the business itself, or any like my business strategy, or and just could be anything.
Anything, in terms of like your next for you, that kind of, I really want to focus on this next growth for myself and or for my business. What would that be?
Great question. So I feel like I'm always evolving, and I feel like as a person, like as you should be. I think that's also one more thing is like I think the involvement of yourself is part of it. I like to compare it to like musicians. Like, so think of the Rolling Stones or versus like other bands. Okay, so Rolling Stones, they've been musicians since 1965 up till now. Their music, if you listen to it in 1965, listen to it in 1977, their albums, and you listen to their albums in the 80s, their music evolves with the time, right? At the 60s, it was more psychedelic, rock. The 70s, it was more had a little disco-y vibe. The 80s, it had more of this like kind of like synth. That you have to think about your business that way. So when I think about my business, it's like I'm always thinking about like how are we evolving? Right now with AI, we're evolving more into that because that's a time, and right now that's what the focus is, right? And so our whole thing is like how can we evolve our business with the times, and that's what we're trying to just align with as much as possible. So for us, our growth could be like right now is a lot of it's with manufacturers where how can they apply AI to help worker productivity in a unique way, right? And help those things. So but in 5 years, that might not be the case. 5 years ago, if you asked me where we were with the business, it was just about like getting people to understand people analytics. Like no one really did it except a Fortune 500, right? Now it's like, oh, some people are trying to get it. It's different. So it's a different time. So I think for us, it's more about like evolving into and aligning with the times and how we can sort of fit into that as it goes.
Nice. And that is so important. I'm so glad you mentioned this too, because it's about soul alignment. And when you are soul aligned, you are more likely to also be able to see then what's external and then aligning with the environment around you. And, where it's not necessarily about just jumping to the next thing, but it's being strategic and smart. And it sounds like you and your team think very much in that way.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I think that's I think a key part of it. I think you're right. I think being more tapped in allows you to see more externally, which sounds counterintuitive. But you see more opportunity for some reason. It's like in different ways that you didn't think before, right? It's so, and I think that's because I think you're releasing maybe like I don't want to call it like fog, but it's sort of like there's this like
You are
you are. In the end,
100%.
it is. It's like you're releasing this fog that's like blocking the what you're trying to see through the clouds. So now you're able to see all these opportunities because like your energy is not being focused on things that are draining you, bringing you down, not aligned. And I think your brain then goes to things that are, as it,
I love how you said that. And because it is a fog. And it's like if your cup is already full and it's full of fog or, not necessarily stuff that's draining you, there's no room for anything else to come in.
right.
And so, very well said. Tyler, it has been like a real pleasure. And I've really enjoyed our conversation and not only, learning more about you and your business, but also your journey with your business and being soul aligned. So I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you, Catherine. Love this conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours about it. So
Thanks for joining us on the AG45 Soul Aligned Strategy Podcast. If you're ready to align your soul with your business, take back your time, and grow with intention, we'd love to connect. Visit accelerategrowth45.com to schedule a call, apply to be a guest, or take the next step toward building a soul-aligned business. At AG45, we believe when business meets value, wealth meets legacy, and time meets freedom, the journey becomes truly enjoyable. Until next time, stay aligned, stay inspired, and keep building your legacy.